Welcome back to Intellectual Reads, where I'm very excited today to bring you my take on Thomas Pynchon's Gravity's Rainbow, the first 100 pages. The Bookchemist is hosting like a 3-month read-along on his channel where he tackles 100 pages of this behemoth every 2 weeks and posts a video with references and opinions about this book and the impressions that it makes on him on his second go-round. So I thought I would join him and post videos as well, giving my opinion on this book as a first-time reader. So I hope you will join me in my discussion of the impressions that the first 100 pages have made upon me and the takeaways that I have came away with after this difficult introduction into the labyrinth that is Gravity's Rainbow by Thomas Pynchon. Stay tuned. Before making this video, I've often asked myself, where do I even begin with this book? It is so dense. And for me, I think it is very important to say that this book was extremely difficult to get through and required a lot of my time to really decipher this book paragraph by paragraph. I found it very helpful. There's a website that gives you kind of a like a synopsis of each chapter within this book, and I think it's important that you always have that page available to you, because it's very easy to get lost in the train of thought and the fragments within this book. That Thomas Pynchon doesn't come at each plot point directly. He comes through back alleys, he comes from the ground up or from the sky down, and a lot of times it's easy to get lost if you don't have a reference guide or a map that he follows. Because he may bring a new topic along and not bind it down to the plot line for a while, so it's easy to get lost and wonder about the importance of a particular passage or a particular character and lose confidence in yourself as a reader. So if you have a little synopsis to guide you along the route, you can always sort of see the light at the end of the tunnel. So I would definitely recommend it. I will also leave it in the comments down below if you want to reference it on your read-along, or if you're reading this text, which I assume you're at least interested in if you've tuned in. So we are presented with multiple storylines. We are introduced to a bunch of characters as they develop throughout the work. This work takes place in, or at least the beginning part of it that I've gotten through takes place in London or England, where you have a cast of characters battling the Nazis or living in London at the time of numerous bombs dropping down upon the city. I don't want to delve too deep into the characters yet, because they're all fresh and new, and I feel like we might be introduced to way more characters in the future, and I'm not sure yet that I trust Pynchon in the importance of these characters and how much of a role they will play in the future, because the addition of characters is prevalent throughout the story. So I'm not sure if I can, within the first 100 pages, decipher which ones will play a more prominent role and which will fall, and which characters will fall in the background and play a supporting role. But the one thing I would like to focus in the first 100 pages, which I found extremely interesting, is how the scenery plays into this work, the environment that he puts these characters in, and what effect it has on their mentality and their function as human beings. The environment within this work is a very gloomy one. It's often, in these passages, it's very dark and cold and very desolate and isolated, with rockets often raining down over the city or landing somewhere to disturb the peace that the characters have found for an instant. It's interesting that whenever we get close to our characters or they exhibit a human emotion, there seems to be a rocket that lands and startles them out of the humanistic emotion back into chaos and animal instinct. And I think this particular scenery and environment that Pynchon has created within his novel reaffirms or justifies the action that all these characters take, because without such an environment they would seem off-putting and exuberant. So I think that the environment is a very important part of this book, because you now have people who have been in war for a long time and in essence know that eventually the rockets will also get them. I love how the rockets are described as almost having a mind of their own. So in essence, there's this eventuality of gloom that is deep within each character. What's interesting about such an environment of death and gloom and destruction and the raining of rockets from the sky is that it brings the characters back to instinct, because now in order to survive they must rely on their animalistic instinct rather than on their humanitarian views and goals in life. Therefore, with each rocket landing and dropping next to our characters, they lose a piece of themselves and revert back to being animals. And I think that's the most important part of the scenery, is that it brings the people, the characters that we encounter, into a new dimension, into the fact that they're relying on instinct more than anything else. Such humanistic elements as compassion or understanding or sympathy or worrying about your neighbor completely disappear, because they lose their importance in a life that is just trying to dodge these rockets. And so it's natural to see how these people, these characters, when their instincts take over their minds, they will also act on normal everyday life with these instincts, no longer having compassion, sympathy, but more so reverting to their animalistic behaviors, where you see a lot of porn and you see a lot of destruction within groups of people, and the steps that they will take, sacrificing nobody and having no love for any person, in order to find a method that will prolong their life, in order to discover a way that they can keep themselves safe and block out the eventuality of death. I don't think it's too far-fetched to say that with the environment and the constant falling of rockets and the eventuality of death that is felt within the skin and bones of each of these characters, it is too far-fetched to say that all hope for a normal life has been destroyed from these characters. And so when you destroy all sense of hope within the human sphere, can you really blame the people for acting upon the way that they are acting? Can they do any worse than this environment has already done to them? They are essentially in hell. And so they are freed in a way from acting like humans and allowed to act in any way that they so choose to, that can give them a frame of mind of existence. And this often, to me, takes them into the extremes that we experience within these fragments of Pynchon's imagination and within the fragments of the communities and the special sects that are created here. Pynchon has created an interesting study on how humans act in times of destruction, when the bubble of humanity has popped, and how they truly are when they don't need to identify with any of the labels they have put on themselves. They are essentially freed from the labels of the world that they try and mimic their function to appease and to fall within societal norms. Having said that, I also think that it's interesting to discuss what the title of the first part of the book, Beyond the Zero, to me references. I think it references the chapter where the one is being discussed. So the idea of that there's only one person. And I had a very interesting take on it once I really started to think about it over a day. And to me, when the one is being discussed, there's a belief that there's like only one of each in the world. And I think, at least what it says to me, is that we all identify with a certain aspect. So for example, someone may identify as being a doctor. Another person may identify with his hobby. Say he's, I don't know, an avid tennis player. And the fact that when we look deep within ourselves, we have an identity that is tied into something, which makes us all unique. And therefore, even though we are many things, essentially we are this one thing. So if you can kind of comprehend it, there's a uniqueness about each and every one of us. And I think within this environment that he has created, it takes that uniqueness and it completely wipes it off the face of the earth. We are no longer anything other than animals. And I think that's why the title is Beyond the Zero. He has completely wiped the world of all humanity. Well, not completely. This is my next point, is I think there's still hope left. And that hope is within the love affair that is shared between Roger and Jessica. If you take, at least for me, if I zero in on Roger, he's a mathematician, right? He deals with statistics, he's a scientist, but he's dealing with raw facts. He's not a mystic, he's not a magician as when you meet a pirate who can decipher dreams and take on other people's emotions, or all these weird people, or all these weird characters we come across in the book that are trying to rationalize the points of where the bombs will fall through various neurotic predictions. But in Roger, we have a character who relies on the mathematics, who's still, in a sense, down to earth, which to me makes him different from any of the characters we meet within the plethora of people that come across the first 100 pages. And I think it's only fitting that he is the one character that believes in love. There's somehow the one still left within Roger, because there's still a human element to him that separates him from everybody else. And I think the more you get away from math and humanity, the more you expect these characters to do obscene and crazy things. And when Pirate cheers for Jessica and Roger, I think it shows you that in essence Pynchon is putting himself in Pirate's body to show us that these two characters may be our only hope. I don't know, I'm not sure. I may be convinced otherwise. I may be just spewing complete and utter bullshit, because I don't know what to expect and I have no idea where the story will go. But I'm trying to decipher of what is the importance of this environment and how has it affected the characters within this story to make the unreal real, to make the obscene relative. I would like to now focus in on the environment that we find Slothrop inside the toilet. And just as a side note, give an interesting image that came into my head when reading him swimming through the sewer system and searching for his harp that has evaded him, and the scenes that he takes in. And this idea, because I enjoy finding other books where I can relate to the current work I'm reading in order to widen my scope. And I couldn't help but, in a way, see a lot of the things that I encountered here in the past reading that I did of Michael Chapin's The Yiddish Police Union. There were a lot of parallels to me, particularly how his work begins when the main character in the Yiddish Policeman Union, Mayor Landsman, how he is scared to go into the tunnel works under his building when he is investigating a murder that takes place in the hotel that he resides. And also the banana cakes and the banana breakfast here described, and the way that the store within the policeman Yiddish Union where they make pies is described. And I found both scenes very mouth-watering. So I thought, so in my head I created this scene where we are on a dark and nasty street in New York, somewhere in a diner, where Thomas Pynchon is sitting and having banana pancakes with a dark roast cup of coffee, and you can see that Michael Chabon comes in late. And so Michael Chabon coming in late, he asks the waitress for a piece of cherry pie, which is from the Yiddish Policeman Union, and he orders a coffee, and in addition he orders a coffee with milk, because his book is sort of lighter toned than I find the Gravity's Rainbow to be. And so they are discussing this, and they are discussing their lives, their work, and Thomas Pynchon decides to speak of the Gravity's Rainbow and introduce Michael Chabon to this work. And he says to him, well, I created this dark world. Why don't you take a character and transport him to your own world and write a book about him? And so naturally, Michael Chabon says, challenge accepted, and he writes the Yiddish Policeman Union novel, where you have Meyer Landsman, who has left the Gravity's Rainbow environment and has now found himself in Alaska. And his relationship with Slothrop is why he's so hesitant to go and investigate the underground tunnels that were used in this new world that Michael Chabon has created. Therefore now, to me, the Yiddish Policeman Union, I think, has found a new perspective, and I can kind of link these books in my own head and see that they are in essence within the same realm of mind. At least that's what I like to think of. In those directions, my mind often wanders when reading a work and trying to find parallels to it and create a better understanding of it. So I thought I'd just leave you with a nice little story that I conjured up in my own head. And please let me know what you thought. Are you reading along? Are you as excited about this book? Has this been in any way helpful? Do you have any take on what I said? I would appreciate all comments down below. I will also leave links to the Bookchemist video on his interpretation of the first 100 pages. And I'm very grateful that you stayed this long and tuned in. And I hope you found some enjoyment out of this video. I do plan to keep going. I do plan to post videos on each 100 pages. Roughly every 2 weeks. For me, it's easier to post videos on the weekend, so look for the next 100 pages in about 2 weeks. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, or if you're watching in the morning, may your day start on a good note.